PSN Studios located in the mountain region of Western North Carolina. You are listening to the Ourlads Football Radio Network.
All right, we are in the western foothills of North Carolina, and we'll probably be getting some sort of tropical storm effects in a few days, but nothing like what's going on down south. So best wishes to everybody on the East Coast, down in Florida, and maybe even the Panhandle in Georgia. So we understand what's going on. And of course, we were talking earlier today on our fantasy show, which is on every Friday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time with Jamal Murphy and Dan Weinrich. We talked about the Miami-Tampa Bay cancellation and how that, of course, will affect fantasy leagues and owners. But more importantly, it's about lives, and hopefully we can distract you here for the next hour and a half. Coming up in just a little bit, actually in about 45 minutes from now, we're going to have a special guest for the first time on the show, a color analyst for the Maryland Sports Radio Network and former top 5 rated high school football quarterback in the country almost 25 years ago, Tim Strachan. And also Ken Meringolo will be with us, co-host of The Audible. That's a First Amendment sports broadcast that is available at hogshaven.com, Washington Redskins. We talked about it last week. We'll talk NFC East football with Ken coming up at the top of the next hour. 2 games going on in the NFC East, all 4 teams taking on each other this weekend, including the Sunday night game between the Giants and the Cowboys. So that's coming up in about an hour from now. But let's welcome in my co-host for the next 40 minutes or so. Ourlads GM and National Scout Dan Shonka. And Dan, the first week in college football is in the books, and 1 game in the books in the NFL. So all the hard work and effort of everybody trying to get ready for the season is finally here, and it's great. It's good to watch some games.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing is with that NFL game last night, it looked like, I mean, it's really funny how people are already jumping, all over Kansas City after the early lead with New England going down the field scoring, and they're ready to sack it. And then by the end of the game, Brady's too old to play quarterback. So anyway,
that again. Here we go with that again.
I was waiting for Friday overreaction, content churn day is what I called it. So but anyway, Brady will be fine. Kansas City looks like they will do well without their safety. Eric Berry tearing his Achilles, which is really too bad. I loved him as a player, and he'll be out again now for this year. But great football player. He's covering Gronk last night. In fact, he was on him like glue last night. And
terrible.
But anyway, then the college games last week with Florida State, Alabama, and of course Michigan. And who's going to hide their depth chart the most, Michigan or Florida? And that was because Jim Harbaugh decides that he's never going to put out a depth chart, but he can't keep us from studying the tape, so we put our depth chart after he puts his team on the field. So,
yeah, and he can't hide Wilton Spate either. So his loyalty, loyalty is usually more than not a good thing, but loyalty gets you in trouble a lot. And Harbaugh is a very loyal guy, and he's especially to his quarterbacks, like he's been his whole. He's loyal to Kaepernick, still is. And that's what he's done with Spate, because he likes the story. It's almost like him, a lunch pail guy, a guy that nobody counted on. But Wilton Spate should not be playing quarterback for Michigan. This is too good of a football team. They have 2 top number 1 high school recruits on the team right now. The one that we don't know about is McCaffrey, but we'll be finding out him soon enough. And you got Peters. And I don't care how guys are practicing. I saw Peters play in the scrimmage. He outplayed Spate. Get the kids in there. Let them play.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Spate looks tomorrow like he did the other day, he's going to, of course, he was yanked for O'Korn, who both those guys are backup guys at best.
Yep.
And maybe 3, and let the young kids, well, first of all, you lose one game or you're on the ropes, the rest of your team knows who the best players are too.
That's true.
Your players know
yep.
that Peters or McCaffrey are going to be better than those 2. So, but anyway, he'll figure it out, and as long as they keep winning, he'll keep doing what he's doing. But the minute they lose a game, then I'm sure he'll reevaluate the situation.
Yeah, and looking at their schedule, they may not lose a game until October 21st at Happy Valley when they take on Penn State. But boy, all those young defenders from Michigan. I mean, lost so many so many guys at the draft that you covered. Nobody expected their defense to look like that, but there's just so many young guys now. I mean, Hurst, of course, is definitely the top senior defender on the team. But a lot of these guys, I mean, whether it's Gary or especially Devin Bush, Devin Bush, another one of these young kids that got a little bit of time last year, but with all those veterans, didn't get a lot of time, a lot of responsibilities. But boy, did he have a great start. Only a sophomore, though.
Right. And so the thing is, Gary, was really in limited action last year. He was in on the rotation. He really looked good last year. And then, of course, Hurst was, technically he wasn't a starter last year, but boy, when he came in, he made all kinds of plays and everything. And I think that, and then Mike McCray, the outside linebacker, he's really a stud. So of Michigan's defense, they're either freshmen or there's a few juniors in there, but, like Rashad Gary, really, he's a sophomore.
Yeah.
And everything, but yeah, they're very young, and so anyway, I think that then offensively, Evans has got a lot of talent, and Isaac is a downhill hammer. I love the fullback in Hill, so I think that they're going to be, and then you talk about youth. How about those receivers?
Oh, yeah.
Black makes a touchdown pass right off the bat. McDoom showed some stuff last year, a talented guy. So, they got the talent. Now it's just a matter of getting experience.
Yeah, and finding their quarterback. And so, because what worries me is Spate's only, I think he's a redshirt junior, and that worries the heck out of me because I don't want him around 2 more years. So, get the young kids in there. The sooner you get them in there, the better. And with all these other young players we just talked about, you can grow and start building something special because, when I take a look at that division alone and boy, because Ohio State's got a huge game coming up this week against Oklahoma. And maybe there's a little revenge there for the Sooners after getting beat last week. Look, Ohio State better play a lot better than they did against Indiana. Or else, because you know how revenge can work in college football, especially with these top programs. And I don't care that the game's in Columbus. I've seen teams go into Columbus and win. It doesn't happen a lot, but Ohio State doesn't lose a lot. But when they lose, they can lose at home. I've seen it before. So they got Baker Mayfield and they got some decent players. I know they're not as strong, at least on paper, than they were last year. But neither. And you look at Ohio State, and they were a young team last year. They definitely went as far as that youth could take them. But even though statistically he played well, I'm just not sold on J.T. Barrett. I just don't see him as a special player. Even Cardell Jones had that special quality to him in that run to the championship. I think they have to run the football in order to be successful, play great defense, run the football, and then don't rely too much on J.T. Barrett, and they should be okay.
Yeah, I tell you, I agree with you. I mean, he's just not very accurate. And, he can go back and run quarterback draws and maybe bootleg out and do some things like that. But no, I'm with you 100% on that. He's not an NFL quarterback, and he's a very good athlete. But I don't know if he can transition out to a receiver or not, like Braxton did, So
now I know.
Anyway.
Now I know defensively, Sam Hubbard is a very strong player. But who's better? Who do you like more, Hubbard or Tyquan Lewis?
Well, I tell you what, they both, they're well. First of all, they're being pushed by guys behind them that are very good.
Yeah.
And Bosa, and then actually, on the other side, Ohio State's got, another defensive end that's really good too. So, no, I think right now you'd have to go with Tyquan.
Okay.
It would be the better of the two, but hey, it depends, in your scheme and how you're going to use the guys. But Hubbard, Hubbard is a talented guy that's an underclassman. Lewis is a senior. So he's got a little more experience, but Hubbard's really been a talent for a couple of years. Hey, the guy behind Hubbard, Jalen Holmes, is a pro prospect.
Okay,
so,
the senior.
And obviously,
okay.
Bosa will be, and he's only a sophomore. So a lot of depth there and a lot of competition, so that's going to make them both good. But I think that I'd say it's neck and neck between Lewis and Hubbard, depending on what you want to do with them.
I mean, from what we saw in the Indiana game, especially with Baker Mayfield throwing the football, the weakness for Ohio State this year has got to be that secondary. They lost so much talent over the last couple of years in that secondary, and they were getting lit up. I mean, Simi Cobbs, who didn't play the year before with the injury, had a huge game, and he's an intriguing player. I mean, Cobbs has got size. And he looks like, I mean, I don't know exactly where he fits in. I'll be interested to see exactly where you put him. Your early draft guide booklet will come out in about a month. So I'm interested to see what you think about Cobbs. But yeah, that Ohio State secondary is going to have their hands full against the Sooners.
They are absolutely, especially with the big explosion. I mean, Mayfield's a pretty good quarterback, no matter what anybody says. If he's Johnny Manziel too or not off the field, who knows? But he sure, he was 21 to 22, I think it was the other day.
Yeah.
And like I said, quarterbacks, that separates the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, is somebody that's accurate and makes good decisions. And certainly he makes good decisions on the field, and he's very accurate.
Yeah, Oklahoma. Mayfield was 19 of 20. And even Kyler Murray, the Texas A&M transfer, came in and went 10 of 11. So they were a combined 29 of 31 for over 400, almost 450 yards and 4 touchdowns. And, of course, Bob Stoops is no longer there. Lincoln Riley, who I've talked a lot about over the last few years, so no surprise that he got the gig there to take over. But being the head coach, we'll see exactly what that does going up against Urban Meyer on the road in a big situation like this. But they've got a guy. What's his name? Okoronkwo. On one of their linebackers who was a first team Big 12 had a decent start to the week last week against undermanned UTEP. But what about that team? When you take a look at Oklahoma, Mark Andrews is a guy that made a lot of noise as a freshman. Didn't really seem like he made that transition. He didn't seem like he developed a whole lot last year, but they had so many other weapons. So immediately it looks like now that some of those weapons are gone, Westbrook and the 2 running backs, that maybe they're right away they're making an effort to go back to Andrews.
Yeah, I tell you what, there's no question about it. Boy, he made some big time catches, and I don't recall. Was it like did he catch 7 for like 130 something or something like that? But anyway, very productive tight end, athletic tight end, just the ball well, plucked it at the high point. So yeah, he's in the mix, and of course a lot of people like that left tackle Orlando Brown to pass protect in there. He's got his daddy's genes. His daddy was just an ornery guy, was a free agent, big guy they used to call Zeus, but Orlando Jr. is a little more athletic and everything. So, he's definitely a pro prospect. And like I said, the jack linebacker, who's the outside guy, is Okoromo, and he's a guy that's got some talent to, rush upfield and come off, and move him around and be a pressure type player. So, but Oklahoma's got some talent there in their secondary. They got 3 seniors, so it'd be interesting to see what they'll do against Ohio State.
So Brown is what, 6'8", 360? That's
no, he's big. I tell you what, he doesn't look 360 on the hoof. He's proud. I mean, to me, he looks like he's around 320.
Oh, okay. Maybe he lost a little weight, which he needed to. That's for sure.
He looks good on the hoof now. I mean, he's not a fat, floppy guy.
Okay. All right. What did you think about that Florida State-Alabama game that we talked about last week? Anybody stick out for you, pro, con? I know a player we didn't touch up on too much had a good game, Sean Dion Hamilton, the linebacker from Alabama. But anybody else that we did touch up on that, again, that you noticed, good or bad either way?
Well, yeah, I think that, one of my favorites is, is, and he wasn't really a big factor, but I like the junior Ridley, the wide receiver, because of his long, what he's done over the long haul, and Deshaun Hand, the defensive end, he's got the size and everything. The linebackers, like you said, I like the corner, Averett, and Tony Brown did a nice job. Of course, Minka Fitzpatrick made himself known out there. That Fitzpatrick is only a junior, but he's projected to come out. Everett is a corner, number 28, I think he was, as I recall, and he was. I think he's a good size corner, and Tony Brown played in their secondary. He's going to be like a strong safety guy that he plays corner or nickel corner or the hybrid safety type position. They move him around a little bit, but he's a very talented guy. So. But really, offensively, a lot of underclassmen there at Alabama, and I think that Scarborough, he showed his thunder a little bit, 235 pounds, and so he showed some things. I thought Foster flashed a little bit. He's a senior, just kind of getting his feet wet. So basically, I think that Alabama's got a long way to grow, but they did a good job, I thought, first time out of the blocks against Florida State.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that, it wasn't pretty, and Alabama's defense is still looking as good as ever. But realistically, this is what we've seen from them the last several years. They play great defense. They shut you down. The offense really hasn't done anything to wow you, but that's because they don't have any special quarterbacks. They're not a dynamic passing team like we see in college football nowadays, which is just fine with me. And it's been a successful system there for Saban. But yeah, if they're going to take that next step, I'm sure they're going to want to see some progress from Hurts after a pretty successful freshman campaign. But it's against a tough team like Florida State. And now, unfortunately for the Seminoles, their season's pretty much over now. Unless, of course, they get any sort of miraculous play from, and I guess they're saying they're going to play the freshman James Blackman, right? That's what we're hearing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, he wasn't. He was actually the third quarterback, on the roster, but they jumped him over and J.J. Castino, and so Blackman's going to be the guy.
All right. Well, unless this kid can do something we're not expecting, because losing to Alabama doesn't mean you're out of the playoff race. So, nope. But whether the freshman can do something special or not, we'll see. They take on Louisiana Monroe, and then in 2 weeks they will host Miami. So and they of course have a new quarterback with Brad Kaya. Not surprisingly, who was let go by Detroit, and he was picked up by who again?
Carolina, I believe it was.
Carolina. Which is a smart move because Anderson's about 50 years old. It's a time to move on from him and bring in a young kid that could actually develop behind Newton. Not sure Kaya's the guy, but, as we talked about a few months ago, put some weight on the kid, and maybe he can be a decent backup in the league. All right, so that was one of the games. What did you think about the game that everybody's talking about, Josh Rosen, UCLA? And this is, I talked about this on the Jet Show, and I also talked about this a couple months ago with the whole tank nonsense. That NFL team, sorry, they rebuild, yes. Tank, no. Tank is stupid, and the reason it's stupid is because you never know when you're going to get that pick, and you also don't know whether these guys are coming out. You don't know whether they're going to have a good season or a bad season, and I know it's only 1 week, but everybody was saying Sam Darnold, and after 1 week, I'm sure there's a lot of people now going, well, maybe Josh Rosen. So what did you think about that performance by Rosen?
Well, to be honest with you, people were talking about Darnold, and Allen from Wyoming.
Wyoming, yeah, that's right.
Those were the two guys.
They forgot about Rosen.
Yeah, and then Rosen was down the line a little bit because he's kind of a, like I said, acts more like a rich kid out there instead of a tough kid. I think he showed some toughness the other day because he was getting hit and everything. And
that's
then,
right.
Of course, he had the huge fourth quarter with 4 touchdown passes. And now, see, the biggest difference between, say, him and Mayfield in those games last week, Mayfield basically, now Andrews caught some balls, where he was covered. They were close and they had to pluck him. But most of the time, his receivers were wide open. The receivers for Rosen, they had to get open, and he threw it, lasered them right in there. And I think that, but then you worry about, he showed his toughness and everything, but, he's out last year with an injury.
Yeah,
and
can't keep that up.
Ability, to me, Dak Prescott, when he was built like a running back. He's a tough guy. Wentz, a big stick. He's thick and strong, tough guy. Rosen, that slender build bothers me. And but hey, we'll see what happens. But he certainly is going to be in the mix for one of those quarterback spots that they're going to go. But hey, here's a little trivia thing for the Jet fans too out there. Who was 8-8 when he was a rookie quarterback for him not that long ago?
8-8 as a rookie quarterback not that long ago.
Second round pick.
I guess.
Okay,
you mean Mark Sanchez? You mean
Geno Smith?
Oh, Geno Smith. Okay.
They were 8-8 with
second
him,
round
and that
quarterback.
Was with
okay.
Very poor play calling and everything else. And they don't know how to develop quarterbacks there, and they don't know how to pick quarterbacks there. So I don't know if I'm a quarterback going to the Jets, I might pull a John Elway and say I'm not playing for you.
Yeah, the good thing is that at least they're starting to build some young receivers, which Geno did not have that year either.
No, right.
Yeah.
He had nothing.
No, he had nothing.
He had no receivers, no running game.
I don't even remember who those guys were.
Coordinator.
Yeah, bad coordinator too. Yeah, it was Tony Sparano was his coordinator, wasn't he, for a year, I think? So all I remember. And Marty Morningweg.
They wanted to throw down the field all the time.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, they had Morningweg and Sparano, and it wasn't a good situation for.
Train wreck.
Yeah. Even though, you know what, I kind of like already what I see from Chad Hansen. I will say that. I know Stewart had a couple of touchdowns in the preseason game, and he'll probably come along as well. But boy, every time they throw the ball to Hansen, he's catching the ball. He looks like a real polished receiver. I think he's gonna have a long career.
Yeah, no, that he is. You're exactly right. He is a very polished guy. Unfortunately, when he was his junior year, which he really, he could have had another year at Cal, but he was nicked up. He had an ankle problem, but boy, when he went in there and played, he was smooth and snatched that ball and did some really nice things. I think Stewart is really going to help. I loved him at Alabama, so I think that, but anyway, so that needed we digress. But anyway, I think Rosen, he probably slid a little bit up. Although Darnold, I knew that was going to happen because, Western Michigan's not a bad football team, and they played well. And, Darnold struggled a little bit the first time out. But, hey, all they had to do, though, is give it to that ball in the backfield to their stud running back.
Yeah.
And that made everything okay in Ronald Jones.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the running backs this week. And, look, Saquon Barkley, to me, is still he's been so productive the last couple of years, and he's still kind of like an unknown in a way, because even though Penn State made the run last year, went to the Rose Bowl, still it happened late, and Penn State hasn't been a winning program for a while. I still don't think a whole lot of other people outside of the college football establishment really understand how good Saquon Barkley is. But I was looking at some of these running backs this week, and Ronald Jones. I was also impressed with Josh Adams from Notre Dame, and even John Kelly looked good, breaking some tackles at Tennessee. And I know it's Georgia Tech, but hey, I had never, Kelly was more of a part-time guy last year, and now is the full-time guy at Tennessee. But is Jones right now? Is he kind of at the top of the class, or Barkley? Who do you like better?
I'll tell you what, Greg, I'm not so sure Barkley's not the best player in this class.
In the whole class.
He's a junior in the whole class.
Yeah.
His contact balance and catching the ball and just, running like his hair is on fire. And, he's a tremendous football player. And I just think that, last year in the Rose Bowl, the war against Southern Cal there kind of was this coming out party, and at least nationally, I think
Sure.
the Big Ten, they knew about him, but nationally, and then I think that this guy is, he's got size to him too. He's 220 some pounds. It's not like he's a little guy.
No.
So he to me, he's the total package. He's a tough kid that blocks. He catches, the wheel routes too, not only check down out of the backfield, but I mean, he's a true pro, 3-down pro back. So I expect him to be a top 10 pick next year.
Yeah, Penn State. I'm going to be posting early playoff forecast, futures kind of thing later on tonight at Ourlads, and Penn State's going to be in my top 4. I mean, I think they get no respect. I think they're going to wind up getting back there. Not only getting, well, they don't want to. I guess I don't even know how it works this year. I don't know where the Rose Bowl is. I don't know. That thing confuses me each year. I have to look it up, find out where the championship game is. But I don't think Penn State's going to have to worry about going to a secondary bowl. I think they're going to the playoffs this year, and Barkley is definitely one of the main reasons why. So absolutely think Penn State is being undervalued, but. We still have at least a little ways to go before we find out how for real they are, because Pittsburgh barely beat Youngstown State last week, and they got Iowa at the end of the month, so they'll be in your neck of the woods to take on the Hawkeyes, which is never an easy assignment. And Iowa had a couple players stand out. That linebacker Jewell, is he the top player on that team?
Josie Jewell, yeah, I tell you, he's an outstanding middle linebacker. I tell you, he's super against the run, and he's improving against the pass. So, I mean, he's, I think right now you'd probably say, because of the value of linebackers and we see what that is, but maybe a late 2, definite 3.
Okay.
Right now, but, and again, hey, it all depends on how they run and all, but he's a very good athlete. He runs well. And, if he runs in the 4.6s, I mean, he's going to play. So, very smart guy. So, he understands the game. So, he's going to be, he's certainly going to be the top 100 players in the draft.
Yeah, and they have a veteran offensive line. And whenever you have Kirk Ferentz at the controls, they're going to have a good offensive line. And now they got a veteran offensive line. And Wadley's back. And you know what? I thought Nathan Stanley looked pretty decent. For his first season, for his first start.
Absolutely he did. There's no question about it. Here's a rookie, first, year guy, really has his first game that, he started and everything, and threw 3 touchdown passes to, a tight end that came out of nowhere. Fant, everybody knew about him, on the team, but, here's a guy at 6'4", about 245 that can really run, and just ran right down the seam. Now, I didn't want to get overly excited because it was Wyoming who lost all the receivers.
That's right.
And that's why I felt bad for Josh Allen.
Yep.
Hey, he had guys that dropped touchdown passes, the other day, and they threw a perfect pass. They dropped it, but I tell you one thing, that guy's got a rocket on him.
Yeah.
I mean, he can fling it. So, but Wyoming, they lost some people last year, 3 receivers actually. A couple of them are on practice squads. One's on Hollister's on the 53 up at New England.
Yep.
So he lost some receivers. He lost his running back, Hills down in Atlanta now. So he lost, and then Roulier, the center. So he had a new center.
Yeah.
Roulier's on the 53, at Washington. So he lost a lot of guys. Everybody's saying, oh, man, they, hammered. Well, Wyoming, hey, they lost a lot of people. And so I won't get too excited about that particular game. But that being said, Iowa did the things they had to do. They started out slow, and they were without 3 offensive linemen. Their normal starters, they were out. They
guys were banged up.
Those guys, so
okay,
kind of evened it up.
Okay, yeah. So, but yeah, Josh, it wouldn't be surprised if he had a Dan Marino final year, where his guys graduate. The numbers aren't there, and everybody sours on him. Even though, of course, this is the draft, and everybody will probably criticize him to hell for the first 2 months after the season, and then with 2 or 3 weeks before the draft, he'll be the first pick in the draft.
Right. You can almost count on that.
He'll be at the combine. Right. He'll be throwing those darts over the field, and people will go, "Oh, I got to take a second look at his junior year," and then and then look at then they'll start saying what we're going to say all season.
One thing I was happy with in regards to Josh Allen the other day was he showed a lot more accuracy. Even though they dropped him at times, but he threw because last year he had receivers that made great catches. He'd get it close to him, and they'd make great catches for him. I thought he showed a lot more accuracy this time around, and like I said, it makes me sick when I see receivers dropping balls that are right. Between the numbers, they throw perfect passes and they drop them. And hey, NFL teams kept a few of those guys around this year too. And I'll bet you New England wishes they had Austin Carr back because after losing Mitchell and Edelman and now they're scrambling for
I was surprising. I was surprised they let him go.
Yep.
I mean, and he got picked up by who again?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. Okay. Well,
he's on their 53.
Yeah. So that's what happens. All right. And by the way, let's also keep in mind we are talking about Wyoming, and Craig Bohl did a great job getting that team to where they were last year. But it takes time to recruit and get better players. And there's no question if Josh Allen, if he was eligible for the draft at the end of the last year, he'd be gone. He knows what he's dealing with there, but he can't go. He's got to stay. He's not eligible. Now, what about Stanford USC? Now we get to see Stanford, but that's against Rice. They had the long trip back from Australia. They had the extra week. It is USC. It's a big rivalry, of course. Stanford has beaten USC the last 2 years. They beat them last year. I think that was Sam Darnold's first start. I think.
I think you may be right. Yeah.
Yeah, and things didn't go too well for him in that first game. But that's Stanford. Stanford lost some key players, of course. They lost one of the best defensive linemen in the draft. But this is they're a well-coached team. Bryce Love surely looked good running the football. You got Scarlett running the football. He's a big boy, so it looks and we know they can block. So they just got to get Keller Christ to play a little bit better than he played last year. What do you think about Stanford's chances of going up against USC on the road in this spot? Because Sam Darnold's going to be kind of like jumping at the bit to prove everybody that was a fluke. I'm going to come out and show you I'm the top pick in the draft.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I think the thing is about Darnold is he's a pretty steady guy. I don't think he gets real high or real low, and I think that he'll be fine. There's a lot of experience at Stanford. Stanford up front defensively, you got the 3 seniors and redshirt seniors, and a very talented junior in Dylan Jackson. So defensively, they're going to be pretty good. In Southern Cal, they lost those offensive linemen last year, and Wheeler, he ends up making it as a free agent up at the Giants, and he's on their 53. And so Banner, he's getting bounced around a little bit, but he got picked up again the other day. So I think Baltimore might have grabbed him, the big white body guy. But and then Turek, the center, was out a year, so they're kind of rebuilding that offensive line a little bit. But hey, they've got Southern Cal is always going to have great skilled positions, and this year's no different. But I think that the thing is, if Stanford controls the football like they always have, and you don't have the ball, Darnold can't do much.
Yeah, I couldn't pick that game. I have no idea what to expect because that is because also it's Stanford. I don't really Rice is that's you can't really grade them there. But what about on defense? They have Cameron Smith, Iman Marshall. Are those the 2 top guys on defense for USC? Cameron Smith. What kind of a pro could Cameron Smith be?
Well, I tell you, he's a guy that people are going to watch this year to see, how much better is he getting, is he getting better every year or I'm sorry, every game? They've got, they've got some talent over there, but they got some young talent. So I think that that's the thing, they're just going to have to, they've only had one game so far, and I think that we're going to see the best here in the next few weeks.
And Ronald Jones, as we mentioned before, definitely one of the best backs in the country. What I really like about some of these guys I watched play, I mean, they don't look it. Size-wise, but I mean, maybe it's their upright rushing style. But when I see Josh Adams and Ronald Jones, especially Josh Adams, I mean, when he runs, I mean, he looks like when he runs, he's 6'8". It's just weird. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, and maybe it's just his running style, but they're graceful when they run, especially Jones. Jones looks like he's got incredible talent.
Yeah, he does. In fact, he exploded last year. When he got his chance to play, and the running back Justin, let's see, he's with actually Los Angeles now. Justin Davis. He was hurt a lot last year, and so Jones got his chance to show out. And but Justin Davis made it with the Rams out there, and that just tells you that he was taking a backup to this guy here, and Ronald Jones is a pretty good player.
All right, so those are some of the big games coming up, including, as we mentioned, Notre Dame. You got we'll keep an eye on Josh Adams and also their new quarterback Brendan Wimbush, who got off to a good start against Temple and their new coaching staff. So we'll find out how for real Notre Dame is. They go up against Georgia, and what a luxury for Georgia. I mean, it really is. You watch Florida play, and they haven't had a quarterback there in I don't even know how long. Even though they did have Greer, but they didn't have
Tebow, I guess.
Yeah, that's right, Tim Tebow. And here's Georgia. Jacob Eason goes down, and they bring in Jake Fromm. It's like, well, how does that happen? And you look at Florida and the crap quarterbacks they kept throwing in against Michigan. So that is a heck of a luxury to have a sophomore who was a true freshman last year in Eason, and then you have Fromm, a true freshman, going out there and replacing him.
Yeah, and but Georgia has always recruited well. They really have. They just of course, Stafford was there.
Yes.
And they've had some talent. Basically, a running back. They've always had stud running backs, and this year's no different. You got Chubb and Tony right
Michelle,
now.
Yeah.
There's a 1-2 punch. That it's going to take some pressure off of the off the quarterback too. So I think that it should be a great game, and somehow Georgia always kind of steps on their foot or trips or something when they run into it, because they're loaded with talent every year, but they always seem to be a bridesmaid instead of a bride.
That's why Mark Rick's in Miami, and I think
Yep.
they obviously there's no way he should look. They have high expectations there, as well they should, but Mark Richt did a tremendous job there at Georgia, and he just couldn't get him over the top. It happens, but like you said, he did a great job recruiting. I'm sure he'll do a great job at Miami. So, who is their best for both teams? Who's the best player for both teams? Is Chubb the best player for Georgia?
Yeah, I would say Chubb is, and then for Notre Dame, he's not a sexy position, but McClinchy, the offensive tackle,
okay,
is he would be their top guy. So, but there's going to be a lot of talent across the board there, younger talent, but it's going to be a good group.
All right, we have about 5 minutes to go. I wanted to ask you. I put out a list of players that I think fans should keep an eye on. Players that were drafted following the second round. So third round guys or more. And of course, there's guys like, the easy guys to talk about. Kareem Hunt, of course, who had a tremendous game last night. That was easy.
That's singing to the choir there.
Yeah. And also Cooper Kupp, who, by the way, big surprise, how great of a preseason he's having. So he's going to have a tremendous career. But out of some of those players that you saw on my list, which player, especially, some of the guys that might be middle round or a little bit later, which guy do you kind of agree with as far as, that's a guy to definitely keep an eye on?
Well, I hate to say this, but my under the radar rookie list had nobody on it. So.
Oh, okay. You had what do you mean? Nobody from my list?
No. There's now on the list you sent me. There's nobody on it.
What do you mean nobody on it?
It's blank. Yeah, it says under the radar rookies.
Oh, that's probably because I was expecting you to look on the website, or you already had it. That's my fault. I'll go.
No, I thought there's certain ones you want me to comment on.
Yeah, I should have
well,
provided you with the information, so you wouldn't have had to do any additional work.
Hey, McCaffrey, let's just throw it out there. Hey, McCaffrey's a guy. He's not under the radar.
No, he's not.
But I mean, he's a guy that we're looking forward to seeing play. There's no question about it. I think that.
I'll throw some guys at you. How about another guy that was definitely a bargain? Cincinnati Bengals defensive end Jordan Willis, who already has 4 sacks in the preseason.
Absolutely. Yeah, here's a guy that we gave a late first round grade to, and he did everything we wanted him to. And the preseason, and I like I said, I'm aghast at here. For instance, I'm going to throw this out again. But the East-West game this year, 69 of those guys, made rosters, either, practice squad or the 53, and several of them are 53-man undrafted free agents.
Wow.
And here's a guy like Willis going in the 3rd round. I'm beginning to wonder, if these scouts are even looking at players or they know how to evaluate them, because there's just talent there. Let's just touch on the Jets briefly. Look at Robbie Anderson. I mean, he's an undrafted free agent again, starting now. So,
that's right.
And I mean, we can go on and on about these guys that are just having a tremendous job during the preseason. I mean, hey, the Sluter kid from Northern Colorado did a really nice job up at Denver, and they cut him, and then Minnesota. They sign him for $20,000 a week as a practice squad quarterback.
Okay.
But there was this. I'm trying to think. In the preseason this year, there was just a ton of talented guys. That really Gideon from Michigan did well up at Minnesota. I believe he's going to start the weak side outside
4th
linebacker,
round.
4th round guy.
Yep.
And I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of
depth.
Once they get out there, they're showing what they can do. You got some other names for me?
Yeah. How about D'Angelo Henderson? I really like this guy. 6th round pick for the Broncos.
From Coastal Carolina.
Yep, Coastal Carolina. Yeah, I liked what I saw in the preseason from him.
There's another guy that I think that has a chance to help. He's one of those slippery guys, can get through a seam, and he's got some muscle to him where he can break some tackles. And he's a live one.
And George Kittle. I mean, there's actually a couple of guys in San Francisco. Kittle's going to start at tight end. They even let Vance McDonald go to Pittsburgh. And also Matt Breida. Matt Breida, who had big-time stats at Georgia Southern, and then his coach leaves, Willie Fritz, and then Georgia Southern just went, down the tank. They passed the ball more. They didn't play well. Another situation. You don't play well, you come out, everybody kind of forgets about you. And they've been impressed with him so much that with Joe Williams on IR, they went ahead and let Tim Hightower go, and he's the next guy. I mean, if anything happens to Carlos Hyde, which usually does happen, he's going to wind up starting for the Niners.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. That your scenario there, because I liked Brett when he was a junior.
Yep.
And then he's not really that big, but he's really thick.
Yes.
He's a thicker kid, and he's a guy that. Like I said, when I was studying Antoine Williams 2 years ago, who was drafted in the 5th round by Detroit, and then Detroit ends up letting him go right at the end of the thing because they got so many linebackers. But anyway, Breda was and then Kittle. See, Kittle had a foot injury and missed some games last year at Iowa, but Iowa's tight ends. I mean, if you go back to the last several years, they even though they have a tight end go as a undrafted free agent, or he's drafted like Fedorowicz, who's now down at Houston, signed a big an extension, big deal down there just a couple of weeks ago. They know. See, it's easy for NFL teams when they're comparing apples to apples. Okay, so I'm a tight end coach, and I go into Iowa. Well, hey, I know these guys know how to block, zone block, and they know what they've been coached, for 4 years or 5 years on exactly what to do. Well, they get drafted, and a guy like Kittle, he comes in, Iowa brings in those tight ends that have really good hands. They're very good athletes, but they might have been real skinny or something coming in there. But they are built up by Chris Doyle, their strength coach. These guys are ready to play, and Kittle is. And I'll tell you what, Beathard looked great in the preseason. You know? And guess who had the longest run in the NFL during the preseason?
Kamara?
64-yard touchdown run. Who had the longest run?
Kamara?
No. Guess again. It's C.J. Beathard.
Okay. Well, that would have made sense.
Longest touchdown run in this preseason.
Wow,
so,
54 for a quarterback. Okay,
yeah,
pretty good.
Quarterback.
Yeah. So hey, you know what? Shanahan knows how to coach quarterbacks. So
yeah. Well, I tell you, see, he knew what he wanted. He thought he was getting. What he did is probably get a better version of Kirk Cousins. Is what he did.
Yeah. So that would be a nice little relationship there. They already have set with Kittle and Beathard. 3 other guys I'll throw your way. Devon Godchaux from Miami, who I thought played really well in the preseason, and they're saying he might even start because Jordan Phillips just hasn't really caught on yet.
He was a big lazy guy at Oklahoma, and one thing you can say for John from LSU is he's not going to be lazy. So you know.
So maybe, and he's going to be able to. He'll have a lot of assistants too, playing alongside Ndamukong Suh. He's not going to have to worry about anybody paying attention to him.
Right.
And then 2 receivers, Tywan Taylor and Kenny Golladay, because we talked about the Lions needing size after they lost Bolden, and Golladay gives them some size. I know he's a little banged up right now, but he's a physical, bigger guy that could be a good red zone threat. And Taylor, who was so productive at Western Kentucky, has had a very good preseason. And with Corey Davis out and a couple other guys also on the shelf, well, Davis was out for the preseason. 2 guys are out for the year. He's all of a sudden going to be getting some serious reps especially maybe even early in the season. So I think Tywan Taylor and Kenny Golladay can end up as pretty good players down the road.
Yeah, Golladay had a good breakout game where he had 2 touchdown catches against the Colts during preseason, and then he is a big target. And you know, he was an East-West guy who's with us, and then he got injured right before the coming in for the practices and stuff. But so we know him. We scouted him. We're at a couple of games and everything, and he's really a big time guy. Like I said, here's a 6'4" guy with good long arms and make plays. Tywan Taylor has just been tremendous. He's got really good speed, runs really good routes, shows some polish to him. And he's definitely a guy that is going to make some noise this year.
Yeah, that Tennessee offense could be real explosive. They've got the receivers now. They got the running game. They got the tight ends. They got the other kid, Smith, as a backup now. They've got the offensive young linemen. Watch out for them. I'm still not sure they got the right coach and the right staff. But hey, you know what? We'll see. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and they're going to excite their fan base. And looking forward to that Oakland Tennessee game coming up on Sunday. But as we talked about when he came out, they got to keep Marcus Mariota healthy, and that didn't work out last year. All right, Dan. So a couple more weeks to go before the booklet comes out for the early preview. Correct?
Absolutely, and grinding and seeing what happens here the next, last week, and then the next couple weeks, and then we'll be ready to go to get, because we'll have a good feel of these guys, and they won't be injured or quit or what have you. Hey, we'll see what they can do early in the season.
Yeah, because I know what changes. It's like you said, because all you got to do is hold on to that, and then you take a look at all the changes that take place between now and then when the guide comes out. But it's a great reference point, and we'll talk more about that when we get it. And we're also going to talk starting next Wednesday at 4 Eastern, every Wednesday throughout the season. So thanks. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football, Dan, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday.
You bet. Thanks a million, Greg. Great being with you. So long now.
Thanks, Dan. All right, that's Dan Shonka. And again, Dan will be with us through the season now on Wednesdays. So we've settled on a day. We've had Dan on, of course, on the last couple of weeks, but Dan will now be officially on with me every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And as well, he should be, since this, the Ourlads Football Network does represent his own website. So anyway, Dan will be with us on Wednesdays throughout the year. Okay, coming up in about 10 or 15 minutes will be Ken Meringolo to talk NFC East football. But before we talk NFC East football, let's continue to talk some college football. Big win for Maryland over Texas. DJ Durkin is trying to build something at Maryland. And I know that wasn't the story. Everybody wanted to talk about Tom Herman and, it's Texas getting blown out at home to Maryland. But I knew better than that. I expected that game to be a lot tougher than people thought because I'm a Big Ten guy. I know Durkin being a Michigan guy. I know what he's doing there. But still, yes, was I surprised? A little bit. Maryland went crazy. But this is a team to keep an eye on, and I wanted to talk a little Maryland Terrapin football, so I'm going to introduce their sports radio network analyst. He's also a former top 5 rated high school football quarterback in the country almost 25 years ago, Tim Strachan. Tim, 25 years ago. Boy, time
Come
goes.
on, man. You're showing my age.
I know.
Good God.
I saw your picture, though.
I thought this was a friendly show.
I saw your picture, though, when you were in high school. So that's all. I haven't seen your picture now, so I feel like that's who I'm talking to.
I'm a little heavier.
Oh, all right. So.
not as well shaped.
That's okay. You've earned it. Tell me, what about that win, especially after such really? The last several seasons, things just haven't really gone their way. Last year was a major rebuilding year, but that must be that must have been incredible calling that game.
It was an incredible call. It was so much fun to watch. It was a very exciting game. 10 plays combined between the two teams, over 20 yards for touchdowns. And you had 2 blocked field goals that both went the other way for touchdowns. A 91-yard punt return, an opening pass by Tyrell Pigram, who we call Piggy. On his first throw of the game was picked off for a pick 6. So there was so many exciting plays. It was a very fun game to do, but in all honesty, it was shocking. It was great to see. It was a great win for Maryland, for Durkin, for the players, for the program. But no offense to Texas, the players, Tom Herman, or the fans, there's absolutely no reason they should have been ranked going into that game, much less 17-point favorites over Maryland. Now, I wasn't as comfortable as you were going into the game. I gave Maryland about a 20% chance to win the game, and that's because I have seen so much bad football in the 22 years that I've been doing Maryland football that you tend to not have that kind of optimism. But after watching that game and seeing what Maryland was able to do, there's a lot of things they got to clean up, like in the special teams area and stuff like that, but you do that from week 1 to week 2. I think that this season actually now has a lot of optimism going forward. Games against Minnesota, Northwestern, Indiana, Michigan State, those games now are looking a lot better than they were, say, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you look at this division, though. We all know about Michigan and Ohio State, and, of course, now Penn State. But we don't know if Michigan State's turned a corner yet. Even though the quarterback played well, and they had terrible quarterback play last year, and it's Bowling Green, so we got to give them a little bit more time. But Indiana played maybe a little bit better than people thought. Of course, Maryland with the big win, and even Rutgers played a lot better than people thought against Washington. So this division looks like it's going to be pretty tough, even when you got to go on the road and play teams like Rutgers and Maryland, and Indiana.
Yeah, let's all come down to earth for a second. As high as Maryland fans are on that win at Texas, which is big, it's not something to shake your head at. But at the same time, they're still going to have a really tough time against Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Penn State. Those are going to be games where Maryland will be and probably should be big underdogs, probably double-digit points there. However, as I just said, the rest of the games on the slate are all now very winnable games, and they're going to be all competitive, but they're going to be very winnable games. And I think that at first I had said maybe Maryland's ceiling in terms of a record and wins was going to be about 6. That may be changing a little bit, but they're going to have a little tune-up game this weekend against Towson, an FCS school. They'll have a week off. And then they have UCF, who's going to be a very tough team. They put up about 60-some points this past weekend themselves. So all of them are going to be tough from here on out. But I think that a lot of them are going to be a lot more winnable than I thought they were like I said about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Mackenzie Milton, who has kind of struggled a little bit last year, is a heck of a talent, and Scott Frost knows what he's doing, and they're going to have it looks like they're going to have a really exciting season at Central Florida. So, yeah, that game coming up in a couple of weeks after the bye, looks like that's going to be a fun one to watch. But what about the quarterback situation? Because as you mentioned, Pegram had a great game, and I can't even imagine being a Maryland fan and going through what you guys have gone through the past, 5 years or so with the quarterbacks going down. I remember what it was 2-3 years ago. You were playing linebackers and converting them to quarterbacks, and I mean, and then the first game of the season, it's just when all the fans were about to go, this is great. Pegram gets hurt. So tell me about the new quarterback that's coming in, Kasim Hill, and do you think that is going to be a not enough of a drop-off? You think it's going to be okay? Things aren't going to be as bad as it may appear?
Well, let me address Piggy first. So when I heard that Piggy was going to be the starter for the Texas game, I kind of was like, I'm not so sure about that. We all know that he's a very dynamic runner with the ball in his hands, but he really struggled throwing the ball last year, and not just throwing into traffic or reading defenses. We're talking hitches, slants, kind of easy throws. He was bouncing them to the wide receivers. He just was not confident. He was not very accurate. And I had said prior to the Texas game, he's really got to grow up. Yeah, I mean, big time grow up in the passing game if he's going to be the starter and Maryland thinks they're going to be successful. Well, he proved me wrong. He proved me wrong against Texas. That first pass was a little leery, and I think we all looked at each other in the booth and go, uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah.
But then he really pulled it together and probably played the best game of his entire life. There's no doubt about that. His deep ball was great, but that's also because the running game was working so well that it sucked up the defense from the Texas secondary and the linebackers and allowed those passes and those big plays to be open. But unfortunately, he did get hurt. And in camp, it came down to the wire between Piggy and the true freshman, Kasim Hill, from St. John's College High School here in the district. And, the coaches are very confident in this young man. And the fact that it came down to the wire, they were almost about to hand over the reins to Kasim on day one. And I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it. Look, as great of an athlete and a football player that Tyrell Pegram is, I've always said that at the end of his career, when it's all said and done, I don't think he's going to end his career as a quarterback at the University of Maryland. There may have even been plans at some point during this season to hand the reins over to Kasim Hill at some point. The one thing that he has done more than anything is impressed the coaching staff and the other players on this team with his maturity, the way that he has approached the game at such a young age, being just a true freshman. But they have all called him a natural leader. They're not worried about him acting like a freshman. He prepares like a veteran. Coach Durkin has talked about it over and over again in his press conferences, how impressed he is with the way that he's come ready to play. And so the game's going to be a little fast for him physically, especially at first. And that's the thing that Maryland coaches need to be aware of. Mm-hmm. So they can't put too much on his plate. They can't expect him to be the hero. He's got plenty of weapons around him. If they make the game plan simple and they don't put too much on his plate, I think he's going to be just fine. There's going to be no drop-off whatsoever. And I actually think that he's a better passer than Pegram is today. And even as well as Pegram played on Saturday, I really think he's just a better passer. And if you have a guy who's a better passer, put him in at quarterback, use Piggy in other areas, it makes your whole offense better. So the biggest disappointment is the fact that Piggy's not going to be available at all in any capacity, whether it's quarterback or as a guy that they can get the ball to out in the space.
Who's the leader on defense? Is it Carter? I mean, Carter had a big game. What do you have? 7 tackles, couple of sacks, and of course he's coming off back-to-back 100-tackle seasons. Cockrell's also a very instrumental part of the team. But is Carter the leader of that defense?
There's 100% no doubt that Jermaine Carter Jr. is the leader of that defense. He's actually probably more so just the leader of the team in general. He's really taken on that role. I think everybody's looked at him. He's probably the most experienced. In fact, I know he's the most experienced player with the most starts of anybody on the roster right now. And he's proven it on the field. He's proven it off the field. He is the defense. He is the character of this defense, and he's embraced that role. And I think he's got these players and Coach Boo and everybody on the defensive side of the staff have done a great job of getting this defense to where it needs to be. It's aggressive again. much more aggressive than it was a year ago. And every Maryland defense that has been good at all in my 22 years of doing this have been the ones that have been aggressive. And I'm really looking forward, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do for the rest of the season as well.
All right, Tim. I know you got to run. I will ask you though, if any Maryland fans outside the area they want to listen to the broadcast, where do they go? Do they go to the Maryland website?
They can. They can go to umterps.com, and there's an icon there where they can catch our calls. The legendary play-by-play voice Johnny Holiday is my broadcast mate. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Sports Hall of Fame. He's one of the best that's ever done it, and I'm just honored to share a microphone with him and a broadcast. And I invite anybody who wants to hear a true Maryland call to tune in whenever they can.
Tim, say hi to Ken Meringolo.
I'm not going to talk to Ken Meringolo. I talk to him too much as it is already. I can't believe you got him on the show anyway.
I have him on
every week. The end of your show is really degrading here.
I know. Well,
I started the conversation as a Maryland fan, but I don't even know who to root for now.
Yeah, we talk baseball every week, so that's this is different for us. This is only the second time we're talking football. But
Ken knows his stuff. He's a hard worker. He's doing a great job with our podcast on First Amendment Sports called The Audible. We do a lot of Redskins stuff, and we do some other DC sports teams, the Nats, Caps, Wiz, and sometimes even some of the local high school stuff. We do everything DC, and Ken's the brains behind the operation, and we're having a lot of fun, and I hope people will tune into that podcast as well.
All right, sounds good. Tim, I look forward to talking to you at some point during the season, and hopefully Maryland keeps winning football games, and we'll definitely talk to you before the Rutgers game because I'm a New Jersey guy. So
I would love to do it. Have me on any time, and good luck. And hey, Ken, don't be weird, all right?
It's not just brains; it's brains and eye candy. You always forget that part.
Greg, thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye.
All right, Tim Strachan. So Maryland football. I didn't think I wasn't sure I'd talk Maryland football this year. Didn't know DJ Durkin would be able to turn that thing around this fast. There's still a ways to go. It's only one game. Texas isn't as good as people think. There's that. But still, you're obviously in the area, Ken. That's big for the area because sort of like me when I lived in New Jersey, it was hard being a Rutgers fan because they weren't very good. And where I lived, I was like 5 minutes from the city. So it was a pro area. There really wasn't a college football team that people paid attention to. But when Rutgers became relevant under Schiano, you could see what happens when they become relevant. Then all the pro people and the community, and all of a sudden it gets interesting. That's kind of got to be the same way by you, right? Because there's really, what would be considered the top college teams in your area that people pay attention to the most?
It's got to be Maryland. UVA is just a little too far away. Georgetown's a little too small.
Yeah.
So DC is kind of right there. DC is fifth largest media market, top five. Maybe it's climbed.
Yeah.
And the Redskins just dominate it. In fact, it's a topic for another day. But we've done a little bit of research, and we're pouring through the numbers. It's actually unreal how saturated the Redskins dominate the media market. I don't think there's another major media market that's dominated by one team in the same way. And to your point, Maryland has a hardcore fan base, and they. I grew up a Maryland fan. My dad went to Maryland. My brother went to Maryland. We root for Maryland. I wave the flag. Basketball obviously is great, but when it's a football team, can put it together,
that'd be huge.
It becomes a topic of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's on our mind.
Yeah, and look, I think they both, Maryland and Rutgers, have the right coaches, and they're both very fortunate to be in the Big Ten. You could say what you want about how tough that division is, and it is. It's maybe the toughest now. It might be the toughest in college football this season. But it helps. It helps with recruiting. It helps with knowing that you're going to play Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State every year, especially when you get to get them at home. So if Durkin can keep doing what he's doing, it's no wonder why he'd want to take a job like that.
It's fun. I happen to live down the street from him. I see him walking his dog, and you get that. You look at him, and I've always seen him like, oh, that's the Maryland football coach, But then you see them win on national television against a nationally ranked team, and you see him walking his dog. You're like, all right, coach.
Yeah, right.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Exactly. Yeah. So Chris Ash and DJ Durkin, maybe they'll be household names in the next year or two. Let's talk NFL and NFC East. We'll be talking about the NFC East with you all season here on the Ourlads Football Network. And the Redskins, the team that you cover, your favorite team, they have a home game. I was actually surprised, talked about this with Tony Mejia on Thursday when we previewed week 1, that they were very slight. I don't know if the odds have moved back to even, but they were a very slight 1-point dog at home, which I was a little bit surprised. Not because I think that there's a major talent difference. It's just that because I don't think there's a major talent difference, I always figured, well, the home team should be favored by a couple points. You surprised that it doesn't appear that the Redskins are getting some respect here? And what kind of a matchup is this? Is there a reason why that they think that the Eagles have a little bit of an edge here? Does it have to do with matchups, recent history, or just the fact that the Redskins might have had a slow preseason?
They've had a slow preseason. There's been turbulence in the offseason on Washington's side. I think from a Vegas standpoint, the national perception of the Redskins hasn't really raised in any significance. They've been dominated on national television in primetime games somewhat regularly over the last 4 or 5 seasons. So it's easy to see why the money is going that way. That your talking heads on your sports stations or the national shows seem to also kind of buy into Philadelphia's edge in this game. I haven't seen a lot of people picking Washington. I do think it's an odd line, but at the same time, and the other thing, the Redskins have won 5 in a row over Philadelphia. So
okay, well, that's huge. That helps.
And I think what your more hardcore gambler knows that they've actually done a decent job at covering the spread. And I think part of that, over the last 2 years, but maybe the last 3 or 4 years, or whenever they've been halfway decent, they've run down the stretch. Wins 5 of the last 7 in a row in 2012. I don't think the national gambling audience in Vegas catch up to that right away. So we'll see. You call it a pick'em, and I think it's fair ultimately because at least outside of Washington fan base, you have pretty much everyone debating over whether it's going to be the Giants or the Cowboys to win the East, with the Eagles and the Redskins kind of scrapping below them, and we'll see how that plays out. So it's a good matchup in week 1 to have what most people consider to be the 2 favorites play each other and let Philadelphia and Washington battle it out on the other side. So I think we're going to learn a lot. And it's interesting that you're going to have all the parties that you want to see involved, and I think everyone knows who that is on national television on Sunday night. Somehow, some way, the NFL figured out a way to get Ezekiel Elliott onto the field. Good for them, I guess. But yeah, it's going to be a fun start.
Look, just the thing about the NFL is that you watch the preseason. We know it doesn't mean anything. Sure, sometimes teams don't look good, continue to not look good in the regular season. But you also get situations where we've seen countless times, like last night with the Patriots losing, I always reference when they lost 31-0 to Buffalo, their Super Bowl season, whatever that was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I think Bledsoe was the quarterback in Buffalo that game. And they go on to win the Super Bowl. So that's first games even don't mean much. So but the fact that these 4 teams are playing each other in the first game, because you don't see the division matchups too often early on. And I think that's the reason is they don't want to put them early on in the first game if they can avoid it, because these are important matchups. And these teams, both of them, you would expect to get better and better as the season wears on. And I think the interesting thing about both teams, you look at those receivers, and they're all new. The Eagles are going with Jeffrey and Smith. And, of course, the Redskins situation that we've talked about before, Not only are they hoping to get Josh Doxson out there, even though he was with them last year, can he stay healthy? Does he have what it takes to be the number one guy? But they also, of course, have Terrell Pryor trying to take over with Deshaun Jackson gone, and of course, also missing the receiver Garcon going to San Francisco. That was a big loss as well. So what do you think about what you're expecting to see from both passing offenses, knowing that they're going to be breaking in a whole new supporting cast?
Offenses are typically slow at the beginning of the season anyway. So, I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be a much better second half team. That's what I've been, saying and writing over the last few weeks. I like the pieces that they have. I don't know if they're going to be there yet, and I don't know if Carson Wentz is ready to be the guy that overcomes. I think defensive coordinators are still going to be able to limit him, and we'll see, how far their defense can take them in the first half of the season. Philadelphia, that is, because until Carson really starts revving up, which I do think he will, it's going to be going. I think for them, and Redskins need all the help they can get. Their defense was historically bad last season, especially on third downs. They got a lot of youngsters out there. Just quickly, DJ Swearinger, the new safety. Stuart Cravens was supposed to be starting. I don't know
what happened to him? What's going on with him? What did I hear that there was something about him possibly retiring? What is all that about?
So at least he waited until after they made all the cuts. Which is ridiculous. Comes in and says he's considering retiring. He had a couple incidents along these lines at USC. I think, it seems obvious, at least they're making it obvious without telling us what it is, that something's going on, something's wrong with him. He needs time and help to figure it out.
Needs a hug.
That seems to be what he's doing. What's that?
He needs a hug.
He needs something. I think everyone at least that's involved, certainly people are jumping off the deep end in the fan base, but I think the team seems to be taking a delicate, hand to it. I think the coaches are saying all the right things. His teammates are being supportive. The other side of it is, people are wondering why he waited until the coaches had already cut, a guy that may have not cut, given this, scenario, and certainly, teammates. I think, just anecdotally, I think he got hurt at the beginning of last season, and he just didn't show up, I think, a day, and they kind of got swept under the rug. So there's been these little things going on. And we'll see how it plays out, but it's a hit to the Washington secondary. The good news for Washington is they haven't been good at safety for quite some time. So, they're going to put the Shazer Everett back there. They're pretty strong on the outside with Josh Norman. They got some young corners, Kendall Ford, Fabian Moreau behind Rashad Breeland, and Zach Brown is new in the middle. Ryan Kerrigan is, as good as he ever was. And, the first round pick, Jonathan Allen, is up front. So, them against Carson Wentz is going to be a fun match. I think, if you think about it in those terms, I think it very much looks like an even match.
Yeah.
And we'll see what Kirk Cousins can do to their defense.
Yeah, and then, of course, you got Kelly, even though he's the starter, how long will that last with Perrine? And with the Eagles, they got LeGarrette Blount. And even though we haven't seen much from him in the preseason, it's the preseason. I expect the Eagles to have a much better opportunity to run the football now this year. They have a good offensive line. They got Lane Johnson all season after his suspension last season. And look, again, they got those receivers, and maybe Torrey Smith has finally found a home. And we know how good Alshon Jeffrey is as long as he's healthy. So the makings of a good offense, and on defense, they're an aggressive defense. They've got a lot of new guys in the secondary. They added Ronald Darby. So I kind of like what I saw out of them as well in the preseason with their defense. And I think when you're taking a look at both of these teams, the Redskins and the Eagles, I don't see why anybody would be surprised if any of these teams, including the Eagles or the Redskins, won the NFC East. There's just not that big a disparity in this division with talent. And when you have quarterbacks in this division like Wentz and Cousins, anything is possible. So what do you think about overall Eagles as a realistic chance to make the postseason then?
I think it's a tough putt for them. they got the same teams we do. The NFC East draws the AFC West. Tough division to play. I think their defense is different than the Redskins' defense in Dallas and New York. I mean, they're base 4-3. They're going to get challenged. I think against again the AFC West. Oakland. I think they have Arizona. They do get Arizona at home, which is a big one for them. I don't think they fare too well out in Phoenix. It's hard for me to buy the Philadelphia to the NFC East favorite because I just don't think their offense is going to be ready.
Well, it's up to Wentz. That's the thing. He's got to grow up, and he's got the talent. So, what I like about them is that they were in a lot of close games last year, and they lost a lot of close games. And when you have a first-year head coach and a rookie quarterback, you're going to lose a lot of close games. And that's the one thing I like about them is that then you should see the progress as long as the coach learns on the job and the quarterback learns. That's the thing I'm interested in about the Eagles. Will they learn from what happened last year? And if they do, then maybe they start closing out those games, and maybe they start, the coaching staff makes better decisions, the quarterback makes better decisions, and they win games that they lost last year.
I think also the other thing Philadelphia should feel good about, and hopefully has a little bit more confidence in going forward. There were just not to be so negative about Jordan Matthews, but I think some people would say that he let him down. I mean, there was certainly games where his play was the one that ended the game. And 60-minute game, a bunch of plays.
Oh yeah, they had bad receivers last year. Their receivers who were there last year did not play well last year.
Yeah, and they really let him down. I mean, I think even with the difference in Blount and Sproles between Matthews and Sproles, Torrey Smith as the WR2, and Aguilar. Aguilar let him down. I mean,
he's been disappointing. I don't even know what he's still doing on the team, to be frank.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's maybe a little bit of addition by subtraction psychologically, but do the things that those other guys didn't do.
Yeah.
I fear LeGarrette Blount if I'm any other team in the NFC East. I don't want to be playing him twice a year. I don't want to get him in the wintertime, in a bitter cold and just have him start, he just seems to just totally get off on guys up, and he's so good at it. So we'll see how they use him. It'll be interesting because I think there's more there even than what they've been getting out of him up north. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, is he a product of the Patriots? Will he now be better being more of a focal point instead of just a guy that comes in and gets the carries at the goal line and maybe takes advantage of the fact that the defense doesn't worry about him and they're worrying about Tom Brady. But what I also like about the Eagles is you got Fletcher Cox, who's one of the most underrated players in the game for his position. They drafted Derek Barnett. He's going to be a good player for them. And I also really like Jordan Hicks. I think Jordan Hicks is got a lot of star potential in him. And Michael Kendricks had a really good preseason. Can he be consistent? So there's talent on this team, enough talent to me that, as I said, the quarterback plays better. The coaches make the right decision at the right time at the end of games. No reason for me to believe that the Eagles can't have a really good season. So when we take a look at the two top teams, yeah, okay, maybe they're being predicted, and I don't think it's a coincidence too that people are looking at the Cowboys and Giants because they are Dallas and New York. But to me, I think there is separation between these two teams. I do. I don't care how the Giants looked in the preseason, to be frank. I just don't. I think when you look at the Giants right now, they did so well last year, finally looking more like the type of defense that they had when they won Super Bowls, and that it shouldn't really be surprising considering the big acquisition of bringing in Damon Harrison and Olivier Vernon. You have Jason Pierre-Paul. Your secondary's got good depth. A lot of those young guys are developing.
Landon Collins is playing.
Yep. And then you take a look at the offense, and now they bring in Brandon Marshall. He doesn't have to be a number one. So now you've got Odell Beckham. I love the fact that Evan Ingram's in New York. I think he's going to be a huge favorite target for Eli. I have no problem with Perkins. The major question mark on this Giant team is their offensive line, but Seattle's offensive line's bad. I've seen Pittsburgh win a Super Bowl with a below-average offensive line. I don't think the offensive line today in the NFL means an awful lot as long as you've got talent everywhere else. And I think the Giants have talent everywhere else. I think they're a more talented team than the Cowboys.
And that could be true, but Eli Manning is not Dak Prescott. And if that offensive line can't keep him with the clean jersey, that is when things happen. I mean, he's got a quick calculator. He gets rid of the ball. Hasn't missed a start since 2004. So he's just steady. He's consistent. He's always there. But when he struggled, obviously, as all quarterbacks would, is when he's flustered, when he can't set his feet, when he can't look upfield. Flowers at left tackle, you want to see him take the next step. Richburg at center, I always liked him out of college, and I don't know enough about their guards, Jerry and Pugh, to suggest that the combination of the three across Pugh, Richburg, and Jerry are going to be able to hold their ground. I mean, that's where the monsters are in this league these days. And if you're subpar in the middle on the offensive line, I mean, you really got nothing. Your left tackle can't help you out too much there.
Yeah, the offensive line is no question. I mean, that's the major strength that Dallas has over the Giants. Dallas has a good offensive line. Giants have a weak offensive line. And yeah, no question, Eli Manning's not going to run all over the field the way Dak Prescott could, or even, of course, Russell Wilson with a very poor offensive line. And I completely get that. And that is probably, though, the reason why the Giants are not considered like a top team to win the Super Bowl. Because if they did have a good offensive line, they might as well be one of the top picks. But every team's got a weakness outside of the New England Patriots. And so you live with it. But I look at the Cowboys, look at this whole Ezekiel Elliott situation, and no matter what happens, that's still, I mean, and this has been going on, as you know, for the last, 5 or 6 years in Dallas, and maybe even longer. They're like Cincinnati light with the troubled players. And Jerry Jones keeps talking like he's got all the greatest players and character guys there, and yet they got guys left and right being suspended and all this other stuff. And he sticks up for Ezekiel Elliott just before he becomes a Hall of Fame participant, which I thought was disgusting. Really what the NFL needs is a guy walking into the Hall of Fame talking up a player who beats women. So I think that has to come into effect. And then throw in the fact that I just think that the Cowboys have got to get better on defense. They're not as good as a defensive team as the New York Giants, and they made some additions in the secondary, but all those guys got to learn to play together.
Dallas secondary.
Secondary, yeah. That secondary is, Eli Manning, if he does have time, he's going to pick that secondary apart in game one. That secondary will be a lot better when they're playing together, by midseason. But first game of the season, if they don't get to Eli, I think Eli's going to have a field day.
I have a hard time disagreeing with you. When you look at with Dallas roster, you're not worried at all on offense. It's a Cadillac on that side of the ball. Dak, Dez, and Zeke alone, not to mention their offensive line, not to mention they still have Jason Witten, not to mention their running back staying behind Zeke is just fine. The Dallas secondary, even Jalen Smith getting a start in the middle for them. Now, I think he's good. I think he's athletic and a smart guy, and he can play. But to see him for the first time,
regular season game,
he's going to get tested a lot.
And they got to get a pass rush. I mean, maybe I like what I see from Taco Charlton, and I know Taco being a Michigan fan, so I think they got something there. But DeMarcus Lawrence has got to pick things up. They need pass rush. They need to find a way to get to the quarterback, and that's their weakness right now. Because I do think, again, like I said, maybe not later in the season, because I like the players they drafted. I do. I think the Cowboys secondary could be good later in the season. I just can't imagine it's going to be very good on Sunday night.
I was sitting here looking at the. It looks like Tyrone Crawford is questionable for the game on Sunday, which means Taco Charlton could get the start on the left side. And you're right about DeMarcus Lawrence. They got this kid behind him, Benson Mayowa.
Yeah,
How you pronounce his last name?
He went to. I think it was a Raider guy. But he's a player, sort of like David Irving, who's suspended. They got players, but do you think whether he steps up or not? We don't know.
Exactly. They're hoping. I mean, they're saying the same thing you are. They're wondering where their pass rush is going to come from. They're hoping he can be a little bit of a spark there. Otherwise, you're going to waste Sean Lee on way too many plays blitzing. I mean, he's effective at anything you ask him to do, but I'd much rather have him freed up a little more often than just being forced to be the extra pass rusher all the time. Which I don't think that's what they want from him, but you got to get it from somewhere.
Yeah, he's a great cover guy, and he can do everything. And but yeah, I mean that's not how they design their defense. There, they want to get their pass rush from their defensive line, but that hasn't worked. So yeah, that's the point. Is that if they can't get that, then they're gonna have to find guys to blitz. And if they get to Eli, okay. I mean, Eli throws some interceptions. All right, Cowboys might win that game. But with that giant defense, it won't be so easy for the Cowboys to move against them. And last year, the Giants beat them twice last year, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So you got the situation where you got the Giants winning twice, and then the Redskins won both games last year, and then both of those teams are dogs in the games on Sunday. So the two teams that dominated the season series last year are dogs for Week 1.
Go figure, Greg. I don't know, man.
I'm NFL.
Glad we're not like a 10 point, 15 point underdog to somebody. That at least
like the Chiefs
got some excitement at FedEx.
Yeah, that's the first. Chiefs were what 9.5?
Yeah,
maybe 10 last night, and
unbelievable.
And they were able to win that game. No undefeated season for the Patriots. Yeah,
that's right. Those bets can be cashed in now.
That's enough of that nonsense. All right, so let's not put Washington in the picture since that's your team. Who do you think out of those three teams will end up winning this division?
I mean, if I had to pick one team, I'd take Dallas. I mean, I think
even not knowing whether Zeke is going to play or not in 6 games.
Yeah. I'm just trying to find something to believe in, and I think for the sake of a 16-game season and to take all the weaknesses for everyone. I mean, the offensive line to me is a motor that can power any one of those three teams to the playoffs, and Dallas has the best one. You can do a lot of things behind that offensive line, almost. Regardless of which defense you're going up against. So, if I had to bet on one of those three teams, I would certainly put my chips on the Dallas offensive line. And
okay.
I think, Darren McFadden. I've always loved Darren McFadden. I think that the thing about him it's not a stereotype or a rumor about his injuries. At this point, it's a fact.
Yeah.
But you don't need 16 games from him.
And you got Alfred Morris if you need him for a couple of games. You know Alfred Morris well.
I know Alfred Morris well. So exactly, they have everything they need to operate behind that offensive line, to score points, to hold the ball. I mean, really, that's what they did when they couldn't score points. They held the ball, and you can win a lot of games by dominating the time of possession in this league. So, and Garrett's a smart coach. I don't think anyone. There's many fan bases out there that would bemoan having to predict a Cowboys, pennant, so to speak. But I'm not inspired necessarily by Philadelphia's offense, and I'm a little. To me, Tom Coughlin ran the kind of ship that was just somewhat unflappable.
Sure,
in a really ridiculous, media market and a frenzy at all times.
Yeah.
There was just something steadying about him and Eli Manning together. Coughlin's gone. I think what you saw last year when you saw New York kind of standing up and taking care of its own business, to me, it was like the vestige of Tom Coughlin. It's not about a lack of respect for their current coaching staff. Not at all. I just don't see the New York Giants as a team that's better than the Dallas Cowboys.
All right. Okay. Again, this is going to be a very close race. Injuries are probably going to play a big role, or suspensions. They'll play a big role in who wins this division and who wins these types of games that we're going to see on Sunday. these division matchups. Getting off to a good start in this division could be very important for all these teams, and we'll see how it goes. We'll talk more about it, of course, all season long.
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, if we're doing the season outlook, or as far as the NFC East is concerned, NFC East plays the AFC West and the NFC West. So there's a lot of cross country traveling for the NFC East this year. You might say you're getting a little bit of a down. You still get Seattle, you still get Arizona, but you do get the 49ers, and you can maybe take advantage of the Rams. But man, that AFC West is certainly tough, and traveling, depending on who draws the Seattle road trip and who draws the LA trips.
Yeah, but those aren't those are advantages though for teams like, say, the Eagles and the Redskins, because don't they? I mean, again, I'm not talking about necessarily those divisions because they're playing, but isn't there there's usually is it 2 games a year that the first place team has to play?
The first place.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, so that in a division this close, and I don't know which of those games. I don't know which. I haven't looked at it, so I don't know exactly who the Cowboys and Giants have to play, and then who the Redskins and Eagles have to play in those 2 games. But
Cowboys have Packers and Falcons.
Well, that is as tough as you can think of. So
that's tough. Yeah, the Giants have the Lions and the Bucks.
Oh, that's not okay.
Are the Saints and the Vikes?
And how about the Eagles?
And I believe the Eagles are the Bears. I believe they're the Bears and the Panthers. So Panthers are going to be a tough one this season. I'm not sure about Chicago.
Yeah. So right there is proof that the team who's got the toughest is Dallas. They got 2 really tough games that they could lose, and if the division's a 1-game situation, that's going to be an edge for the other 3 teams. So
without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, drawing Packers in Atlanta, good. Hey, more power to Dallas for having to play those guys.
Yeah. All right. So, by the way, I will. We've had the last couple of weeks off on Nat Scrap, so I'll be talking to you on Tuesday night, right?
Can't wait. We got lots to talk about. We're in the closing. We have a magic number, Greg.
5, 4. What is it?
I believe it's 5 right now. This very second.
Good. Get that over with. Even though we knew they'd win the division in April, so unlike dumb analysts who actually every year keep talking about the Mets, and if they can just keep their starting pitchers healthy. Yeah, okay. That's if the Jets can just win the Super Bowl. I mean, we can say all sorts of stuff that'll never happen, but it is what it is, and a few more games, it'll be all over, and then we can look forward to the real season, which is the postseason. So we'll talk Washington Nationals baseball, 7:30 on the Prime Sports Radio Network over at primesportsnetwork.com. So I appreciate that you coming on, Ken, and setting up the interview with Tim Strachan. And I'm sure we'll talk to Tim later on this season when there's I would guess there'll be some important Maryland Terrapin football games coming up later in the year now after they've gotten off to a good start, and then we'll talk more NFC East football. What's coming up in the next week for these teams? Do you know what the schedule is like next week?
I know that the Eagles travel to Kansas City. Good luck, buddy. Good luck, guys.
Wow, that's tough for them. They got to go to Washington and Kansas City to start the season.
Yeah. The Giants play host to the Detroit Lions.
Okay.
The Cowboys go out to face off against Denver, and I think the Redskins are. We're on the road. I believe we go to. Let's see here. The Redskins. I think we go to L.A. play the Rams, I believe.
Oh, that's not bad. That would be interesting against McVay and the Goff and the Rams. All right, that could be a game to tune into. Believe it or not. All right, so
believe it or not.
Yeah, believe it or not. It all depends. We'll find out if the Rams can beat Scott Tolzien and the Colts, and then we'll make that decision next week. All right, sounds good. So again, looking forward to talking to you throughout the season regarding the NFC East and the Washington Redskins when called upon, and again, First Amendment Sports. That's where we can find all your shows, including. I mean, how many shows you do a week? One.
Oh, 3 or 4. A couple.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to stay active.
And at least right now it's just all Redskins and Nationals, right? And now Terrapins football.
And now Terrapin football. We got the WCAC, the High School Sports Conference, just tops in my opinion in sports. And watching these guys play football is you're watching guys. I mean, you're watching guys who are going. They will play on Sundays, which is crazy.
In high school.
What's that?
The high school kids.
High school kids.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, look, an even better reason why if Durkin can turn things around there, he might be able to keep some of those kids home.
Oh, it's already happening. The early commitment from the D.C. area to the University of Maryland is way up year over year, and the pipeline is just exploding. So they want to go to Maryland. Like, it's a place where these guys want to go. All of a sudden, they talk about it. It's becoming a little bit of a scene, and I think people want to throw it all on Under Armour's, plate. I think they're part of it. They're certainly doing at Maryland what Nike did in Oregon, or they're trying to, and it's starting to have an impact. So far, we're seeing positive impact.
All right, Ken, appreciate it. We'll talk to you on Tuesday. We'll talk baseball, Nat Scraps, and then we'll talk to you in the next couple of weeks. And then again, if they want to listen to all your shows, all your podcasts, they can just go to firstamendmentsports.com.
Yeah, we're on SoundCloud. We're on iTunes. You can search First Amendment Sports. Our show's called The Audible. And come on over and check out a little Hawks Haven while you're at it.
All right, Ken. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon here. We'll talk football here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network in the next few weeks.
Looking forward to it, Greg.
Thank you. That's Ken Meringolo. And again, Ken will be with me, and he's I've said this before in the other shows, of course, and we say it whenever we do a Washington Nationals baseball show at 7:30 on Tuesdays, is that we are going to have baseball coverage every day in the postseason. So we'll have a baseball show for the Washington National fans out there on Nat Scraps on PrimeSportsNetwork.com. So we just took the last couple of weeks, football season, and as National fans, we're just kind of bored. We're just bored. This is, when you're in September, you're bored. Part of it also has to do with the fact that we haven't won a playoff series ever. So we would be bored of the regular season because it doesn't mean anything. We want to win a postseason series, for crying out loud, and that's all we've cared about all season. So we're finally almost there. We'll wrap up every Nationals baseball game in the postseason on Prime Sports Network. So anyway, this is Ourlads Football Network. And as far as our programming, no more shows for the rest of the weekend. And you know what? Considering I still got some content to produce, including, as I mentioned early on in the show, I've got to put those futures together for college football, get them up, and a few other things. So we'll get those posted up before the games tomorrow. And then we'll also have more college football content. I think I'm going to be posting a Monday. The schedule for next week is supposed to be, and all season long, is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we'll try to get that going next week. Same thing for the NFL. But you can check out all our shows here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. And our next show, I believe, is going to be Wednesday. And that's going to be the new day and time. Wednesdays at 4 o'clock with Dan Shonka. We'll have the Ourlads Football Network Wednesday. We'll have our Thursday show with Tony Mejia to get you ready for the week in the NFL. We'll have our fantasy show on Fridays at 10 a.m. So that's every week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we'll have another show that will be floating around, another show or two floating around whenever there's stuff to talk about here on the Ourlads Football Network during the season. And by the way, also you can catch our Jets Confidential football show on Mondays on PrimeSportsNetwork.com, and we will wrap up Week 1 Monday at 5, and every Monday at 5. Jamal Murphy, who does our fantasy over at Ourlads, is one of our co-hosts along with Jan Levine. Okay, so. Thanks for tuning in here to another football show here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. For Ken Meringolo, for Tim Strachan, and for Dan Shonka, I'm your host, Greg DePalma. Have a great weekend of football action, and we'll do it all again next week, right here on the OFN.
tuning in to this PrimeSportsNetwork.com production. Additional PSN programs are available on demand and conveniently located on our website, as well as our official YouTube and iTunes pages under Prime Sports Network. You can also check us out on Twitter at PrimeSN. Once again, thanks for listening to Ourlads Football Radio Network.